Okay. Good morning, everyone. And a good morning it is indeed. It is a very special day for all of us to join His Holiness the Dalai Lama in his setting here in Dharamsala to bring greetings of the American people, his many friends in the Congress and Democratic and Republican sides of the aisle, in the House and in the Senate. We come here with a renewed spirit of hope, hope that we see from his message always, hope that we see in the eyes of the children, hope that we saw with the preserving of the arts at the the performances last night, hope that we see in the leadership of the Tibetans in exile. So many reasons to be hopeful, and hopeful because so many more people, because of His Holiness's popularity, so many more people wanting to help to have Tibetan culture, language, and religion preserved here so that it can return to Tibet in its authentic form. I'm very pleased to be joined with members from across America. Mr. Sensenbrenner is not with us at the moment, but Jim Sensenbrenner, a top Republican in the Congress, a chairman of different committees over time, from Wisconsin, Congressman Eliot Engel, the senior Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee from New York, Congressman Jim McGovern, the chair of our Human Rights Caucus, bipartisan Human Rights Caucus in the House from Massachusetts, Congresswoman Betty McCollum, a member of the Appropriations Committee, has a lot to do with USAID funding from the state of Minnesota, Congresswoman Judy Chu, member of Ways and Means, important committee from California, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty of Ohio and Financial Services Committee, Joyce Beatty, Jim McGovern, and Betty McCollum were all on the trip to Tibet last year. And a very brand new member of Congress, born in India, Congressman Jayapal from the state of Washington, freshman member. It's always an honor for us to have. She's only been a member of Congress for 3 months, and here she is on this very important trip. Real tribute to her leadership on human rights and her commitment to the values that we all share. With that, pleased to take any questions you may have.
Very warm welcome from C.TA media team. I'm Tenzin Saldon, reporter from Tibet.net, and C.TA press officer and editor of Tibet.net, Mr. Jamphel Shonu, will be asking the questions today, and we hope to finish it in 10 minutes. Okay. Yes, and the speaking order for today's interaction is as follows. Leader Pelosi, Representative Eliot Engel, Representative McGovern, and for the last segment, we would request Representative Beatty, Judy, Joyce, and Pramila together for the last segment.
Well, I might have a little adjustment on that because Mr. Engel, Mr. McGovern will be, and Ms. Jayapal will be speaking at the ceremony, so we may have to impose on some of the other members to take the really hard questions here.
My first question is to Ms. Nancy Pelosi, leader of the Democratic Party in the U.S. House of Representatives. Leader Pelosi, first of all, Teshtilek and a warm welcome to Dharamshala. You have been one of the strongest and most steadfast supporters of the Tibetan people and a true friend of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Thank you so much. My question is, what is your message to the Tibetan people, especially those inside Tibet this time? And why is Tibet close to your heart, and how can we as Tibetans do to ensure that Tibet remains one of the priorities, top priorities in the U.S.-China relations?
Well, I will be talking about this in a few minutes at the ceremony, but I think I speak for all Americans when I say that we share the values of His Holiness. The initiative to preserve the Tibetan culture, religion, and language is not just about Tibetans. It's about the dignity of every person in the world. That is His Holiness's message that has attracted so many of us. Thank you.
My second question is to Representative Engel. Representative, you have helped introduce a resolution in 2015 calling for substantive dialogues between Tibetan and Chinese representatives. But as you know, since 2010, the Sino-Tibetan dialogue has been stalled after 9 rounds of formal talks. In that sense, what can the US government do to encourage the resumption of this dialogue process between the two Tibetan and Chinese representatives?
Well, the American government can do what we've done so many times in the past, is that raise these concerns with Chinese officials. And I think it's important that we introduce legislation and we let them know in the Beijing government that we're not going to turn our backs on the Tibetan people. You know, our president has proposed some cuts in USAID. I'm opposed to those cuts, and the reason I'm opposed to them, there are many reasons, but one of the big reasons is just looking around here and seeing so many people, so many Tibetan people that are relying on a partnership with the United States. So I just want to tell you in closing that all of us up here are totally committed to strengthening the relationship and sending a message to the people who run the People's Republic of China that we're never going to forget the Tibetan people.
Thank you so much, Representative. My next question is to Representative McGovern. As co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission and as an ardent defender of international human rights, you have been one of the most vocal and strong supporters of the Tibetan people in the US Congress. You've also been to Tibet as part of the Congressional Delegation in November 2015. Moreover, you have introduced the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act in the U.S. U.S. Congress, aimed at reciprocity from the Chinese government for American citizens, which includes Tibetan Americans as well. So, in light of that, I want to ask you: do you foresee another congressional visit to Tibet anytime soon in the future?
I think we would all love to go back to Tibet. I'm not sure if the Chinese government would give us a visa, but the bottom line is I introduced that legislation because I believe there ought to be a consequence to China's repressive policies against the Tibetan population. And I'm happy to be here with my colleagues. We're here because we stand with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We stand with what he believes in, and we stand with all Tibetans.
Representative McCollum, Representative Chu, Representative Beatty, and Representative Jayapal. First of all, a warm welcome to Dharamshala. I wanted to ask you, in what ways can the U.S. government invest in Tibetan leadership, particularly with regard to encouraging women achieve new heights in Tibetan governance and leadership and politics?
We were just so impressed to see all the young girls at the school we went to just yesterday, the 3-year-olds to the young women who are seniors. So education and the work that is happening here to make sure that girls and boys have good quality education is paramount to the success of the Tibetan people in the diaspora, but it also is going to be of great help in reaching back the Tibetans who are in exile, reaching back to Tibetans in China, and in showing enlightenment for the women to be able to fully participate in their society. So thank you.
Well, I was so inspired by the dialogue with the Tibetan women leaders yesterday. They presented us with a 10-point program. It was very, very thorough. And I was so pleased to see and impressed by the fact that they thought so much about how they could advance the status of women in the Tibetan community. I want to support that as much as possible, and I think many Americans would.
I joined my colleagues and yesterday widened my appreciation for how we can have women in media, women in education, and also one of the things we talked about this morning with USAID was how we can be more helpful with technology so they can not only see women like Leader Pelosi and us, but it can build hope for them.
We're so fortunate to have the first woman speaker in the history of the United States Congress with us on this delegation and as our leader, and she always does make it a point to make sure that we're bringing women with us on these delegations, but also that we meet with women representatives, because I think one of the things we have to do is just continue to raise the prominence of women's issues in our overall dialogue, and to remind all women out there that there is no path that's not possible. And that we want to do everything we can to continue to strengthen human rights of women, but also the ability for people to forge any path that they dream for themselves.
You can see by the participation of women in our delegation, the value, regard we have for women in leadership, but we were very impressed by the proposal and look forward to working with the women here as they sent us a letter to that effect, and we will.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.